And so if we want to go ahead and um, everyone feel good, ready to go?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining one of our cast free webinars. My name is Allison Posey, and I'm so thrilled to be with you today, this beautiful day in the New England area. And this is the third of our cast publishing webinars that we've done this fall. And this year, many of us, you included, may have felt as though we were novice teachers again, learning new ways to reach our learners and remote and hybrid and new face-to-face routines. And as we work to support our students, our learners, district and professional development leaders are seeking new ways to support educators. And many of us have been feeling overwhelmed and nearing burnout. We hear you, we hear this. So today you are absolutely in luck because the authors of Supercharge Your Professional Learning are here to explore ways to design effective professional development to reduce barriers for adult learners in high stress times like we are in today. So thank you all so much for joining our Cast Professional Publishing, our Cast Free webinar series. But before I introduce our authors, I do want to thank our captioner, Lenore, for being here. If you do want to select closed captions as an option, you can go to the bottom of your screen and just click on that closed captions bar. And we also want to invite you all to contribute to the conversation today. We have muted the microphones because that was a distraction, but we have two options for you to participate at any point. So if you're watching with us live today, feel free to add your comments to the chat box. We may not take them immediately, but we'll try to get back to you throughout the course of the webinar. You you can contribute to the text chat just by opening the chat panel from the center of the top of your Zoom window. And please, choose all panelists and attendees so that everyone can participate. If you do have a message you want just for the panelists, feel free to select that as well. You can also participate through Twitter. So you can use the hashtag CastPL or the @cast_UDL. And our authors have their Twitter handles up as well. So @Kasia_UDL works and @Miss MS Tucker Smith. So please feel free at any point to also contribute to the conversation via Twitter. And if you are watching this as a recording later on, maybe years down the line, you can still contribute to the conversation on Twitter. So I want to thank our cast tech team, Nathan Treitz and Mindy Johnson, who make this webinar run smoothly, but they also help keep the chat going beyond just this 1 hour that we have with you all today. And we also want to let you know that all of the materials and resources associated with this webinar are available on this digital handout. So this bit.ly Supercharge Cast webinar bit.ly is where you can find the discount code for the book, which we'll share at the end of the webinar, and every resource that we cite or share throughout the course of the webinar, we will load into that digital handout. So please let us know if you have any questions about any of those logistics. And so then, without any further ado, I want to introduce my two friends who I'm honored to call friends and professional colleagues, Kasia and Nicole Tucker Smith. I'm so excited to get to talk to you today and to get to hear some of the behind the scenes about the book that you have written, Supercharge Your Professional Learning. And so to begin, we're going to do kind of a different sort of introduction. You can find the bios and the amazing work that Kasia and Nicole do. They're both founders, like Kasia is founder of Learning Key Educational Consulting and Development. Nicole is founder and CEO of LessonCast, but you can find all of that online. We're going to get a little behind the scenes about Kasia and Nicole. So what do you both do to refuel and to recharge? So Kasia, let's start with you today. I was about to say this morning. Let's start with you. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, Allison, thank you so much for having us. This is so great. And I love this question so much because I think that what refuels us is what sustains us. And we have to be so intentional about that, especially this year. So I think of this on kind of two levels. And so for me personally, what really refuels me is being out in nature and hiking with my family. I mean, there's literally nothing more grounding or centering for me than that. But professionally, what recharges and refuels me is seeing groups of people come together and just really honoring and seeing the value and the potential behind our inherent variability. But what's even more inspiring for me and what recharges me, why I've been doing this for over a decade, is that when people recognize that that variability, it transcends that environment you're working in, right? It's not just the classroom or the school or the business or organization. I truly believe that it makes that deep understanding of variability makes the world a better place. And through effective professional learning, how quickly we can kind of facilitate that. And so that is my why. That is why I do this work, why I'm so passionate about it.
Thank you, Kasia. And I'm just, kind of bemoaning. I used to be able to run into you both in some of these
Yeah.
live trainings, and it feels so different now, but it does refuel in a different sort of way. It's just still refreshing to see your face today.
Yeah.
Nicole, how about you?
Yes, so my go-to way to recharge is through dance. So I've been a dancer basically all my life. I'm a member of the Full Circle Dance Company here in Baltimore, and I had the most amazing experience this past Sunday. The weather here has been so amazing, a little bit scary because it's so warm, but so amazing nonetheless. We've been taking advantage of it. So our company had a socially distant dance session, and we chose a place called Harriet Tubman Grove. And so, Allison, you're familiar with the Baltimore area. This place is across from the Baltimore Museum of Art, and it used to be a place where there was a Confederate statue of Robert E. Lee. Well, they took that down, that was removed. They renamed it Harriet Tubman Grove. It's amazing this time of year with like as Kasia mentioned, the nature with the trees are now like they're red and they're golden. But what was so great was being able to dance in space, full out. All this for so long I've been dancing like in my basement or in my living room, trying not to knock over a lamp or something, right? So it still felt restricted, but being able to dance out in the open. The space was spectacular, and it just felt like such a release and exactly what I needed to recharge. And it's still carrying me through because in my mind, like right now, I'm still dancing. Like that's how amazing it felt. And if you bring it back to the science, research shows that like one of the best ways to recharge is through physical activity. And so, even when I can't necessarily get out and go back to that and go dancing in that grove, I can still remember it in my mind. I can still do other things to get up and move around. And it's not a cure-all, but like anything a little bit closer to peace is progress. That's a win.
Yeah.
And amazing to I'm actually feeling that openness you were describing, as so much of what I'm picturing, the last 8 months has been inside and feeling small. So just you describing that openness is just, is really exciting. I got to go get outside.
Oh, we have other dancers. Yay!
Yeah, that's okay. So as you all want to continue to share in the chat box, what refuels you? We were just thrilled to have you all here and to continue sharing with us. So as we begin to think about, some of the unique things that happened this year, your book launched in February of 2020, which, probably seemed like a really good time to get a book out about professional
Valentine's Day. It launched on
Valentine's Day.
Yep.
None of us had any idea that, come November, we would be in such a different place. So, as we think about what refuels and what recharges us, kind of taking a step back and thinking about the launch of this book, how have you managed some of the unique challenges that the globe is facing right now, since the launch of your book?
Yeah, so the book launched as February 14th. A month later, the NBA shut down and Tom Hanks got coronavirus and everything changed, right? And so there have been so many things that have happened. But on a personal note, things started changing for me actually a little bit before. So in January, the day after we received our publication date, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was such a shock to me. I was excited about the book, but like I couldn't, it couldn't really, it didn't reach the level of, oh, you have cancer. And so I was really struggling with, finding out that I have cancer and then finding out that it was invasive and that I would need months of chemotherapy and radiation treatments. And so, on top of all the things that are happening with COVID, I'm also trying to manage this healthcare emergency that I have. And some advice that I received was to keep on living and to keep on doing the things that help me feel like myself. So even back in January, I started to think about, what can I do to help stay doing the things that I feel like myself. So I still kept dancing, but I also wanted to keep working. I really did. I love connecting with other educators and designing professional development and helping think about how we can transform our classrooms for our students. So I love that. I wanted to make sure I could still be a part of that. So even back in January and February, I started looking into how we might apply the strategies in this book to a distance professional learning context, because I wasn't going to be able to maintain my schedule and I wasn't ready to give this up. And so I got a little bit of a head start because I didn't know that the whole world was going to have to move to distance professional learning. And I ended up founding, and my co-founder is here on here. I ended up co-founding Jumpstart PD with one of the panelists who's here. And we decided to create this online community for teachers and leaders who are looking for equity-minded resources, and just being together helped us manage so many of these challenges that we're facing.
Oh, and now that image of you, Nicole, of dancing out in that park this summer, just
I was really dancing.
Oh,
done with all my treatments. I'm so happy.
yes, yes. Kasia, when you think about the launch of in February 2020 and some of the challenges, how did you manage some of those?
I think what really helped me manage, and I think what Nicole is hinting at too, this year has been so extraordinary for all of us, each in a different way. But I think what connects us is that we're also part of this shared collective experience, right? Like there's nobody in this world that hasn't been affected or touched somehow by the pandemic. And so for me, when I started to think about like this collective experience, I think that is what helped me manage some of the challenges. So from traveling 2, 3, 4 times a month to pivoting virtually, that's not just me. That's almost all of our educators in some form had to experience something like that. And thinking about some other demands that we might have had to toggle. So for me, remote learning coupled with continuing to work, maybe not remote learning wasn't something that all of us are experiencing with our children, but we might be, toggling something else. And I think that being so keenly aware that we are all part of this collective experience, that we're all united in this, that's really kind of kept me going. And because I've become so attuned to the challenges, the barriers that people are experiencing, and that's made me really reflect on, as Nicole said, like, what can we do to make this a better place? Because we're all in this together. But honestly, watching all the teachers and how hard they're working has just been also so inspirational. And that's what has also been motivating, that we're all just adapting, we're picking up, and we're finding new ways, because the problems that we're experiencing haven't gone away. We just have to find creative new ways to address them. So I think that just that collectiveness, being in this together, has really helped me manage.
And I love seeing the picture of so is the green screen actually behind you right now, Kasia? And it just looks like a blue wall with bookshelves?
That's right. This is my virtual studio. Yes. So.
Very cool. Very cool. And I want to just note one word that you both picked up on that I just think is such an important one and connects so well to just the feeling that you get from the book that you've written, is that connecting, that this isn't a book about here are some strategies that you check off. You've really crafted a book that's about connecting and getting deeper and getting real and rolling up sleeves and getting into the challenges that we face as a profession. So the fact that you both picked that, this was not scripted, and you both ended up using that word and sharing, and I think really hits on the feeling and what folks will find when they get into your book here. So I know you've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but can you share a little bit about the inspiration to write this book? Why did you write this book?
Allison, so Nicole and I have been working together, I think, for 8 or 9 years. And so we've been traveling together, and when we'd facilitate a workshop and people would say, wow, that was really a great strategy. Can I have a copy of it? Let me take a picture of it. Can you send that to me? You know, that's very gratifying, but it also made us think about like, well, what makes it a great strategy? So I think we were in New York and we both popped our heads out of a hotel, our rooms, and we're like, we should put these ideas in a book. And so we began over time. What was really great about our writing process is we did this thinking over the course of these 8 or 9 years we've been working together. And so we had gone through that thinking process ahead of time, but what actually compiling it together did for us was it made us ask ourselves, why are these strategies effective? And so we came to this idea of what creates healthy and vibrant professional learning. And so we landed with a health and wellness metaphor, and we were thinking, you know, about food pyramids or initially, and because we have to, when we think about wellness, you can't just kind of grab from one specific food group, you have to kind of look at it holistically. And then we pushed ourselves a little more and we said, you know, we need a holistic, multifaceted approach, right? That's what wellness is, and that's what professional learning should be. So if you flip to the next slide, just to give you a preview, we began to think about, well, what is health and wellness and what does that mean for professional learning? And we were thinking about things like, well, how do we detox resistance? How do we make people want to engage in the learning, because change can be really hard? How do we balance the learning so that we're not over relying on one food group, such as lecture? And how do we inspire people with the stories we tell, the images we use? How do we embed reflection strategically throughout the session and build systems that support continual growth? And then how are we mindful about how we design? And so that is how we began to think about all of these strategies. And it's what pushed us to think about why these strategies work. And that's why they translate to those remote environments as well.
And I do think I'm guilty of being one of those people who said, what was that? That was so great. Can I get that recipe? And so to kind of go with your health and wellness, another thing is I love to overload on one food group. My favorite is dessert. And so why not have dessert all the time? So I really do appreciate your, thinking about how to keep the balance going there. And we do invite folks to, as Kasia shared those topics, just to reflect on, which topic might be of most interest to you to explore in this book.
So we're going to actually share a couple of, sorry, Nicole, we're going to actually share a couple of strategies. So from the detox, use it or lose it, and be mindful. That's why those are bolded, but there'll be just a little glimpse as to what that might look like. So we'd love to hear from everyone. What are you interested in exploring? Because you don't have to read this book in sequential order. You can kind of flip around to find, what addresses your needs the most.
Nope, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Awesome. Yeah. So we're seeing be mindful about design. I love it. That's one of my favorite chapters. Detoxing resistance.
Mm-hmm.
I really do like that combination of detox with resistance. Those two words are really interesting to think about together.
Mm-hmm.
Use it or lose it gets a couple.
Yeah, thinking about how we can provide a system, a support network, because we know when we think about sustaining professional learning, it's having that support network, that's that strategic way of thinking about how do we sustain it.
Yeah, and thank you, Sandy, she was saying how the book is awesome. So thank you.
Thank you.
And another little thing about the book I love is it feels like you want to workshop it. Just the feel of the book is very satisfying. So when we look at some of the common professional development pitfalls, what are some of those? And what were some points when you were working, all those, almost a decade worth of work that you'd go, whoa, that's a pitfall?
Yeah, so we listed several in the book. But I think the one that I would say is most common, especially right now, is ignoring toxins, right? So another way to think about it is ignoring the barriers in the current context. So it's, it's like doing a workshop not right now and not recognizing what our current context is for teaching and learning. And that's tough, especially when things keep changing. But we can't plow ahead as if everything is all right when there are a lot of things making it difficult to be all right. Right. So sometimes as educators or as leaders, or even just as human beings, we think that if we talk about concerns or perceived threats or negative issues, then we're creating a negative environment. Well, what we do in this chapter is talk about how, when done effectively, getting the participants' questions and concerns out into the open is like a PD detox. We're flushing the toxins out so that new learning can flow in. And if we don't do that first, then there are too many barriers for our educators to really be able to take new ideas in. And so honestly, there are a lot of toxins to deal with right now. So we have to recognize them. And this happened to me yesterday. I'm working with a learning community. We have planned out the year and we thought we were really good about attending to professional learning in COVID. And we have this introduction to UDL with, actually go to the next slide, because I can't remember what I was saying.
Yep.
Oh yeah, great. We have to speak to the current context, right? So we had this professional development plan where we were going to, we started with UDL and what does it look like in a changing context, and distance learning and hybrid learning. And then we did professional development on infusing trauma-informed care. And we're thinking we're really on it. And next week, we're supposed to focus on expert learning. But yesterday I got this email saying like, look, we are tired. Everybody is burnt out. We are really struggling. Like, we're trying to juggle distance learning and hybrid learning. Like, what can we do? And I can't ignore that, right? I can't ignore the teachers who are saying everyone is exhausted and students are showing signs of emotional exhaustion too. So it wasn't like they wanted to skip the PD, but they were just like, what do we do to address this exhaustion that everyone's feeling right now? So we had to make a pivot, right? We're still focused on supporting our variable learners, but we recognized that we needed to talk about the signs of emotional exhaustion and how to build in rituals to break burnout trajectories, right? So that's our new focus for next week. And so you have to really listen and think about, what are the barriers? How are we going to address those barriers, get them out in the open, remove them so that new learning can flow in?
And Nicole, if we could just press on this a little bit, because a question came up and many of you immediately were like, yes, we want to know. So you're touching on this, but I wonder if we might just go a step deeper with it on how do you effectively then transition from the group naming the toxins? And my UDL head says, oh, we're in the engagement guidelines, we're thinking about recruiting interest, we're minimizing threats and distractions, but then we want to transition to opening up new learning. So this can be a moment, I'm thinking of teachers, you come in from the playground and something could have happened there in a small moment that you have to, again, address, but you want to get to new learning. And it also happens on a grand scale, like this global pandemic that's going on. So what advice do you have for effectively making that transition from naming it to then getting to the meat of the new learning you have to achieve, sometimes in a short amount of time?
Yeah, so I wasn't planning on talking about this. I just find out. But because it came up as a question, one of the strategies we talk about is starting with why. And we break down what's in what is in the why. And in the first one, I wish I had my slide in front of me, but the first one in the why is really about recognizing why are we doing this? And that's when you're addressing the pain points. Okay, so you're addressing the pain points. And I always say, like, don't shy away from that, because we're not going to stay in the pain points. We're going to move. But if you don't address it, you're actually still staying in the pain points. You just never said it out loud, right? So you're addressing the pain points, getting them out there. And then the next one is really, the next step is, okay, well, then what can we do? What can we do to address these pain points? What can we, actually, let me pull up I have some notes here. So things I said I was going to say that was going to be too much. What can we do in terms of thinking through, all right, if this is a pain point that I'm having, and I'm going to use a UDL, for example, where in the guidelines does it speak to this, right? And so now you're making this shift. And so whatever professional development you're focused on, if this is my pain point and I'm looking at this research-based framework, right? Where do I have a window of opportunity into addressing this? And then how can I put it into effect? And sometimes that means looking at others in your community who've tried ideas. Sometimes it means jointly problem solving. Sometimes it means looking for other examples. But this is really where we talk about community learning in particular. But if you start with that pain point and then think about the thing you wanted to teach and how does that thing address the issue, then that's one way to get through some of the toxins.
And what I appreciate you just noted there is that you didn't say, and we're just going to keep going my way or the highway kind of thing, that you're really saying, actually, and I'm going to go back to your pyramid, we need to have this balanced approach. So when we need to pivot or when we recognize that there may still be something toxic in the air that we're trying to address, that we're able to come together, there's that word connecting and the community again, and to be able to make it so you're still able to get to those goals. And
Oh yeah, Bill reminded me. Yes, that was what I said in the book. Bill, thank you.
What's in it for you?
Thank you. Yes, the why. What's in it for you? And so we talk about the, what is the pain point? How can we address it? And the why is what's in it for you? And that what's in it for you is really thinking about what are the benefits? And this is where in the book we talk about the difference between buy-in and believe in. And so sometimes you try to sell this to teachers with a buy-in mentality, but believe in is this idea of, do I believe that if I learn this new thing and try it, it'll address that issue that we just talked about, right? Where's the credibility and what is the support that I'm going to get as an educator? Tell me, what support am I going to be getting to try this new thing, to adjust this pain point that I have? And now I have a believe in reason rather than a buy in reason.
And sorry. I was just going to add to that's what we're talking about, affective change, emotional change, not compliance, but really doing it because you truly believe it. There is a support system to help you work through it. You feel like there are barriers, but we're going to work through those. It's that emotional change that you actually believe in that it's doable, that it's possible.
And if it's not going to benefit the educators in their practice, it might be a point, again, I'm going to use that word pivot that you've been using, a pivot point for the folks who are delivering the PD to say, wait a minute, maybe we do need to go in a different direction. Is this just seat time, or is this actually going to be something that is going to make a change, is going to be helpful for the educators? And because I've worked with both of you in professional development trainings, I think you're masterful at being able to take, pause in the middle of lunch or pause right before a session and hear the questions that folks are asking and really be able to say, do we go in this direction or do we go in that direction based on what you're hearing?
Right. This is where it's really important, as we always say, to be really clear on the goal. The only way you can pivot is by staying clear on the goal, because pivot means one foot stays in place and the other foot moves. So the foot that stays in place has to be clear on the goal.
Right.
And it's the strategy to get there, the path that gets there, the product that has to change.
That's very well said, and a great visual image, and brings me right back to dancing too. So there's some great comments. Folks are sharing some of the toxins. There's actually a long list of toxins that folks are sharing that they've been experiencing. So, the emotional exhaustion, just fatigue, feeling like you can't have something else in their plate, a lack of believing, the importance of equity work.
And don't worry, Rebecca, we did not take that the wrong way. I was right there with you. Right? We're all experiencing that Zoom fatigue. Sorry, Allison, didn't mean to interrupt.
No. Well, I just want to comment on that, people saying that Zoom fatigue. And I think that's also why we started with what refuels you and recharges you, because we have to be intentional about it for ourselves so that we can support other people as well.
Yeah, and there's an increasing number of educators who are trying to serve both face-to-face and virtual students, and they are ready to break. And this is really that's what we were experiencing with so many of the sessions that we have coming up. That's why we're shifting gears. We're thinking through, how do you prevent burnout, right? How do you break the burnout trajectory? That has to be something that we're all thinking about, because otherwise we're just, going to run ourselves down.
Right.
Thank you for sharing these toxins. I'm so glad we get to save this chat.
Yes.
And still, this comment that we're still truly in crisis
Yes.
teaching, that we haven't just kind of said, nailed it, we're going to just start going with this. So when we start thinking about these toxins, what are some things that can make it easier for participants to digest information? I love, again, the word digest, I know is very intentional, but what are some recommendations you have for digesting and taking on new information to really try to benefit our learners and our students?
So this is where we kind of dive into thinking about how can we be mindful about the way we design our learning environments. And so what we like to say is that when a PD provider pays attention, we can begin to design with intention. And part of that is thinking about how do we help people effectively consume that information, because ultimately if people don't, you might have the greatest ideas in the world, but if the people are not able, the participants aren't able to consume it, then it doesn't lead to that change in practice that we're hoping for, right? And so the question is, how do we help facilitate that? So if you can skip to the next slide. I want to kind of explain this little tip by using a metaphor. So just imagine if you are going to eat at a relative's home, or maybe it's just my home, and your great aunt or somebody comes by and loads your plate, and you're excited for this meal, right? But the plate keeps getting loaded, and a second serving and a third serving, and you have gone from feeling excited about eating it to feeling overwhelmed with what's on your plate. And so when we think about professional learning, when we are giving information to our participants, we really need to think about this idea of chunk and chew. When you give a chunk of information, we have to pause and literally let them chew on it. That is the only way that they're going to be able to digest and consume that information. So what does that translate to in professional learning? It's just a little simple tip called 10 for 2. So we think about the chunk and chew 10 for 2. So for every 10 minutes of talking time or lecture time, we have to give 2 minutes of chewing time or processing time. So that might be, if we are in person, it might be a turn and talk. If we're on Zoom, it might be sketch a quick image and show everybody your, the image that it made you think of, or tweet something out, or respond in a chat box, or do a poll, because ultimately whoever is doing the talking is doing the learning. And so if we skip through that chew time, that processing time, we leave people feel overwhelmed because we feel like we have to just pedal through the content. So we're trying to, with this idea, to really pause and slow down and give people time to really process and digest what we are trying to communicate, what we are trying to say.
So here are my notes. I will take a picture and put on Twitter. And I do want to invite anyone now you can do this on Twitter. Take a picture of the notes you may be taking from today and post them to Twitter, and take a moment to chew and to start to digest what you've been hearing. Again, a lot of amazing analogies. And that, again, is a point that I just want to say, this book sings with analogies, and they are so effective. And you all have just been sharing them so effortlessly here. So again, you just said, Kasia, this pedal through moment. That gave me such a strong visual image. And someone commented how effective that pivot comment was, Nicole, about really visualizing where that goal is, that one foot is, and the other foot's pivoting around. So we can give you a moment here to make sure you're chewing and digesting, to please feel free to share some of the multiple ways that you may be processing some of the new information that you're gaining either today in this session or from the book, Supercharge Your Professional Learning.
And I see on the chat that people are talking about Jamboards or collaborative workspaces. So we, in the new edition of the book, there is a section for how to think about these strategies in remote professional learning or distance professional learning. And we talk about creating collaborative workspaces where people are working on a file separately, and you can see everybody's thinking. That thinking is made visible. You can see that processing happen. So Jamboards are another great way to think about those collaborative workspaces.
Right. And I think it's, I love this because it's important to think about options, right? Because sometimes different ways for chewing are, as you get older, you may want to chew on one side instead of the other, things like that. So we want to have options in our PD too, right? And even I find that I have to remind myself that it's okay to be quiet in a Zoom meeting. It's okay to have a moment where, you know what, we're going to take 2 minutes to process, and you can turn your camera off, and you can get up, and you can walk around, and you can have your own internal dialogue. And it's okay. Every minute doesn't have to be filled.
Right.
You have that time together.
And the same thing too, I think you'd agree, Nicole, that's so important for in-person PD, because we will eventually get back to that as well. Sometimes it's so hard as the speaker to give that pause time so that people can chew, so that people can process, but that is where that learning takes place.
But there's so much we need to learn, and there's so much we always want to give our students. There's so much we want our teachers to learn. So how can professional development leaders support teachers without overwhelming them? And of course, we can kind of take this to think of ourselves as educators as well. How can we not overwhelm our students, even though we have so much that we need to get through, and now we're in Zoom? What do you recommend?
Yes, and I wasn't able to fully read this one question here, but I think we might touch on it a little bit with this idea of when people are tired. I see Cheryl saying this, people are just so tired right now. So how can we offer support without overwhelming them when they're like, look, I'm just tired, I'm exhausted, I don't want to move forward. And so there are a lot of strategies that speak to this, but we're only going to share one. And in the Use It or Lose It chapter, we talk a lot about how to offer PD support that saves time versus costs time. So how do we help make that shift? And so if you go to the next slide, one of the things that we talk about, one of the techniques we talk about is creating PD choice boards. And so there's lots of different ways you can do this. But the idea here is that PD choice boards are like the fitness center for professional learning, or maybe it's more like a retreat space. I don't know, fitness center might not draw in everybody, but basically if you think about a fitness center, there's something for everyone. There's a variety of ways that people can grab a tool, grab a resource, use it when they need it. It's open, it's available. And so we talk about the steps for implementing PD choice boards in a way that can serve a range of adult learning needs. And it's providing just-in-time support rather than everybody show up from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a Thursday, right? So it's this idea of, even though we're here all together live, there's a recording for this.
Right.
And it lives somewhere, and people can go back and look at it when they want to. And how do you make that accessible and easy to reach and it requires not saying that you're dictated to my time, but I'm going to provide just in time support. So how do you provide that kind of PD fitness center? And then here's the thing, you can't just put a gym there and expect everybody to go. Right? So there's still coaches involved. There's still some, personal training involved, but the PD Fitness Center, the choice board, gives a space where everyone can go and have access to the materials and support a range of adult learning needs. And so that's one of the strategies that we talk about, how you can create that type of environment. And then what are the coaching strategies, the personal training strategies that go with it to support everyone?
And Nicole and Kasia, there's a question here that I think is really interesting and is one we always we get a lot in just thinking about UDL. We get a lot when thinking about options. So it takes time to design with flexibility. And I even look at the time it must take to put together one of these choice boards. And when we're tired, when we're feeling stressed, when we feel like we're taking on, our plate, to go back to that visual image of the plate, stuff's overflowing, and you think, I know it's best practice to make, to add captions on my videos. I know it's best practice to be able to do alt text. We know what these best practices are, but we're tired too. So what do you recommend that, that challenge of it being one more thing versus, the power of knowing how effective these, and I'm going to, these flexible gyms may be to be able to have, to be robust gyms that people want to spend time in and visit.
So whenever you or someone you're supporting is saying, I'm so tired, I'm doing all of this and I'm so tired, the first question to ask yourself is, am I doing all of this alone?
Mm-hmm.
Am I doing all of this by myself? You know why you're tired? Because you're doing all of it by yourself. Right. And so, and I can't speak for everybody. I don't know everybody's situation, but I guarantee the most of the time when you feel like, woo, I am so tired, is because you're in your office, it's late, you're trying to make everything accessible, you're trying to do all the things by yourself. And so if you're a professional development leader, we have to say, how can we come together so that we're all carrying the load together rather than everybody trying to carry their own rock? Right. And so how can we think about collaborative? And so one of the other things that strategies we have in the book is talking about how do we collaboratively problem solve. But let me tell you, this PD choice board that I created, one, it wasn't created overnight, and two, it wasn't created by myself. Right. And so we said, hey, does anybody have we sat together and we talked there. We kind of walk you through how to create this in the book. But when you're creating it in the book, don't do it by yourself. Right. Do the steps with somebody. And you ask yourself, what are the main challenges that people are facing? What are the biggest tools and resources that would be most effective? What are the kind of go-to things and tools that you use? And so we talk about it. You create your categories. You have a space. Everybody throws it up there. And then you're willing to say, you know what? I'm willing to say, I'm not going to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Right. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but you have to start somewhere. So do the process together, let everybody bring a little something. Now you've got a full meal, put it up there and know that I'm going to tweak it over time.
And I think that this also really speaks to the metaphor. So this whole book relies on the metaphor. And when we think about this fitness center and when we're thinking about fitness, it is easier to do it with a partner, with a group. It's more likely to be sustainable when you've got somebody like, hey, we got to get up, we got to go, we got to check in. And that's what we're trying to create with that professional learning community. You have a group of people that's not just a group, it's a community, and you rely on one another to support one another.
Yes, my workout buddy and best friend is on, I see. Dr. Adrienne Randolph. And so we know that we have this class that we go to every Saturday. I tried to wimp out and not go last week, and she said, no, you got to go. Right. So you got to do this together. You got to do this together.
Right.
Yeah. And my favorite meals are potlucks. They really are. I don't have to try to cook for everyone. That's not going to taste as good. And I'm going to be exhausted and you're not going to like it as much. So just that idea of everyone contributing to it. And there might be one dish and it's always, it's often mine, the one that's sitting there that no one ends up eating. And you think, well, what could I have done differently next time? So it's a great, it's a really good conversation starter too.
Alison, one other thing that it makes me think of. So at the beginning, I said, we are all a part of this collective experience. Like this is something we are all collectively experiencing. And that requires all of us to collectively then come together, right? And so I think that is our strength, is when we can actually pull through together, because this is something that, we're not working in our problems are not in isolation. They're universal at this moment. And so that's where we're going to be able to tap in to our different areas of expertise when we are able to create that community.
Love it. And someone says we need an buddy instead of accountability, buddy. So thanks so much.
That's right.
Fun. That is just great. And just even asking that question, am I doing this alone? And getting to that, is it buy-in or believe in? And when you are doing it together, I think it's easier to get to that believe in, because you're bringing the problems and the real experiences of more people instead of me guessing, I think this is what Nicole and Kasia are going through right now, so I'm going to give them some of what I have. It makes a lot of sense. So here's a great opportunity to be able to share. Thank you all for already sharing, but taking a look here and thinking about how might you be able to use this chunk and chew idea and this PD choice boards to be able to support teachers and leaders without overwhelming the plate, overflowing with the noodles.
Yeah.
Right. And I love, thank you, Anne, buy in or believe in. That's right. Whenever you feel like you're trying to sell something, you need to say, how can I shift this from buy in to believe in?
All right. So we're saying giving teachers choice to individualize, to overcome their barriers to get to their why? Absolutely. So we're thinking about personalization. How can we personalize that learning experience?
And depth over breadth. I think Rebecca and Marina are sharing about that. Right now is not the time to do 100 things.
Mm-hmm.
Now is the time to focus on a few good things.
Yeah. Chunk it in half again, then half again. Absolutely. Less is more. Less is always more.
This is one of my favorite questions. I always get to this one and go, yes. So what are some of the behind the scenes moments that we may not know from reading the book, but that you think might be fun for us to get to know a little bit more about you all in your process?
I think, just to kind of piggyback off of what I said earlier, that I think the time it took us to write the book, a year, I don't know, maybe somewhere around there.
I think it was, about a year probably to actually write it.
Mm-hmm. But all the thinking happened 8 years before that, right? And so it was just this way, the way that we tend to work is one of us will have an idea, flesh it out, throw it back, just kind of thinking about tossing things back and forth until they kind of get refined and stretched out to where they need to be. And it's just, I think what really helped us when we were writing the book is because we had spent so much time thinking and working together ahead of time. Once we actually started writing, it was like that accountability, right? 1 week we would meet almost every week and talk about ideas and toss them back and forth, and really kind of fit things into place.
Yeah, we were each other's accountable buddy.
We have a new word now. Thank you, Sarah.
I was like, because actually what was really nice was we met once a week, but so 1 week Kasia had to have something written and I had to review what she was writing prior to that. Right. Mm-hmm. So she would have to write it. She would say, I wrote it. I'd say, okay, I'm going to read it before tomorrow. And then, give feedback. And then the following week I had to write something and she would give feedback. So it did give you, 2 weeks to write something. Mm-hmm. But every week we were doing something. And that was just a really great system for us to get through.
And you both have children and busy lives. You are, as I mentioned, you both are founders of your own company. How do you take the time? Do you close yourself in a room for an hour a week, or do you go to a coffee shop? Do you have a favorite way that you try to get yourself into that writing space?
We have a lot of coordinated parenting going on at our house. It is very all right, I'm working here, you're working there, we're carving time pieces out. And so
we usually did it early.
Yeah, early. Yeah. I mean, working at very early in the morning, that's my really good work time. Before anybody gets up, that's when you said, Nicole, the house was quiet. I love those quiet moments when I can just sneak away and just think in quiet. So yeah, just finding time where there was, you just have to kind of carve it out.
So what's next? What is on the horizon for both of you coming up? And granted, yes, we hopefully will be able to get to see you more live in some of the professional development trainings, but what else is on the horizon for you coming up?
So one thing I'm really excited about that's on the horizon for anybody who does UDL really, but something that I have the honor of having a big role in is the Universal Design for Learning Guidelines Update Refresh 3.0. And so this initiative is called UDL Rising to Equity, and where it is a community-driven process. It's going to be transparent. Also, just to set expectations, it's going to be multiple years, right? It's a multiple year process, but thinking about how we can mobilize the UDL guidelines to truly address barriers to equity. And so I wanted to share that in case anybody here is interested in learning more, you can stay up to date on the udlguidelines.cas.org site. And if you want to participate in any way, it can be, I just want to lurk and get a newsletter. That's one way, right? Or I want to sign up for a survey, or I want to do a focus group. Please, if you're interested in participating, use the bit.ly link, the bit.ly/collaborate with cast. And that helps us keep track of everybody. We already have hundreds of people across the globe, literally. It's like 50 different countries excited to be a part of this. And so that's something that's on the horizon that I'm really excited about.
I'm really excited too. Kasia, do you have anything? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, so I'm always trying to stretch and think about where can we take UDL next. So yes, schools, and we can think about professional learning, but I'm also really interested in how can we take this to businesses. So whether we're looking at a construction company or a greenhouse with tomatoes, or a equine assisted horse therapy barn, or paint night. I'm just trying to constantly stretch the boundaries. Where can we take these ideas? And so I have a couple of things I'm working on. I'm not ready to share those yet, but I'm just trying to push the boundaries in writing and thinking about where can it go next? Where is it? Where's the potential to see?
Love it.
And speaking of potential, there's so many opportunities for everybody who is on now to have, oh, there we go. I think I may have frozen for a little bit. There's so much potential for everyone really moving forward and what they can think about. So we wanted to make sure that we highlighted some of the items, and then we're going to, obviously probably take some questions, but we wanted to highlight some of the items on the takeaway, the bit.ly handout that was shared earlier. One of the things that I'm really excited about is actually the last bullet that's linked on the handout. We are doing a Supercharge Your Professional Learning course community. And so it is a 6 weeks course that'll launch in January, but it's a year-long community. And part of the registration includes a signed copy of the book. So if you're interested in learning more, there's a link to a flyer. It's not a link to buy anything. It's a link to a flyer to learn. But we would love to have some of your voices as part of that course community. Would be super exciting for us. And then we also have Kasia alluded to how we did a new version of the book with speaking directly to remote professional learning. And so there is a remote professional learning infographic that's on there. It highlights some of those specific ideas that are in the book. And in addition to that, around May or so, I was getting so many questions about, can you help me do this better in terms of remote PD? So I actually published a remote PD Zen EPUB. So it's not a formal book, it's an EPUB format. You can link to it there. It has lots of digital links. And then I mentioned earlier about our Jumpstart PD network. It's a free network there. And you can always also find Kasia and I on LessonCast and Learning Key respectively. So we just wanted to share, that's what you have as a takeaway. Please feel free, how can you get access to remote PDs and EPUB? So if you go to the handout that, if somebody could put it in the chat, the bit.ly/supercharge cast webinar, if you go, no, not that one, not the anti-racist
one you put in earlier.
Yeah.
Although that's a great handout too.
It's a great handout too.
Yeah, if you go to the Supercharge cast webinar, it'll get there, I'm sure. Yes. So if you go to the bit.ly/supercharge cast webinar, one of the links is for the remote PD Zen EPUB, and it's available on Amazon or on Apple Books because it's in the EPUB format. Oh, Mindy, we still love you.
Yes, I'm ready to get this. So we invite you to think now, you've joined us today. What are the next actions you're going to take? Are you going to get the book? Are you going to download or explore the digital handout? Tell a colleague or friend, share the webinar, try a strategy, follow Kasia and Nicole on social media. Take a moment and just reflect on what actions you want to take based on what you've learned today. Maybe it's just to, find the link and explore the link a little bit. So go ahead and feel free to let us know what you're going to do.
There was also a question that I think we want to address. There was a question about
the online learning cohort.
Yes, I think it's the idea of, do you attend and guide the discussions or provide them with guiding questions and let them run? And it really depends on I think it depends on the cohort and how comfortable they are. I always like to err on the side of doing the first one together, especially so I can model being vulnerable and model reflection and model humility and model learning, right? So I like to do the first one together and establish norms, and maybe that you might see from that first one that you need to attend the second one too. And then after that, it can be a little bit more where they're guiding it and you want to pass the torch to someone else guiding it. But I do think that when we are intentional about the environment, we probably want to be present in at least that first one so that we can model what it means to not just be a teacher, but also be a learner.
That intentionality word. Thank you for sharing that one again as well.
And so Andrea, I'm not sure if that answered your question, but that was my best understanding of what you were trying to ask. I love it. Watch the webinar again to digest everything. We tried not to say too much, but I feel like we were answering questions and then kept it moving.
2 books are on the way, one earmarked for a mother-in-law who offers PD at the middle school level, which is great. Exploring the link, reading the books, using it to collaborate with colleagues to update your own professional development. Are there any last words that you want to share with folks? If there's just one quick takeaway, I know mine is, am I doing this alone? I'm going to continue to ask myself that question. That's my action. And I'm going to, where I am feeling like I'm doing alone, I'm going to see if I can find someone to come along with me. So there's mine. Nicole and Kasia, do you have any last words?
You know, I think that for me, what really speaks is that this is something that is best done collectively in a community. And the work that you do in professional learning is so transformative. And oftentimes we don't even see the direct effects because sometimes it scales beyond, what you can even see in that present moment. And so I'm just so excited for all of you in your next professional learning and how you're going to apply some of these ideas. I'd love to hear from you with what's working, what questions you have. So thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, and I think my final last words are just recognizing that it's human to feel fatigued.
Yes.
Right now with everything that's going on, with navigating new realities day by day, honestly, hour by hour. And when I start to feel run down, and honestly, I attribute this to trying to push myself through cancer treatments. I remember I had to remind myself to focus on the higher purpose and not get stuck on the immediate pain. And it's just, we have to, even as educators, remember that higher purpose, that higher calling of being present for our students and present for our teachers. And that means to be present, not to be perfect, but to be present and to stay connected to that higher purpose so that we don't get defeated by the daily challenges. And so I think that's really important because we need to hold up that light and remember what we're working towards and push our way through the tunnel. And we're hoping that there are a few concrete strategies in the book to help everyone get there.
Oh, there are, and I know you all want this. Here is the Supercharge 20 to save 20% on all purchases through December 31st. So you can go to castpublishing.org and use that Supercharge 20 code to save 20% on all the purchases. It's just, I can't even tell you how many strategies are in there. And if you want to geek out on how the strategies align with and have intentionality using the UDL guidelines, that table you all have at the beginning is one that I just love to model how UDL is infused, not added on. So thank you for infusing UDL into everything you did, but you also made it explicit to us. You showed us. And so there are so many, I just can't even tell you. Those of you who have read it know so many amazing strategies in there, even for folks who have been doing professional learning their entire careers. And if you wanted to continue to keep in touch with what's going on at CAST, please feel free to sign up for our newsletter. CAST does a lot of work with research, professional learning opportunities, workforce development. As Nicole mentioned, the UDL Guidelines 3.0 refresh. So a lot going on at CAS. So sign up for our newsletter and so you can keep in touch with us and participate with us. And of course, we always like to know, how was this webinar for you? What other topics do you want to hear from CAST? You have a chance to take a really quick survey. So Nicole and Kasia, I've learned so much from you and I get to talk with you a lot. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing so honestly and openly about yourselves and about your work and just all of the amazing experience that you've brought to professional learning around the world. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you
so
for
much.
having us.
Thank you.
And thank you
Everyone
everyone for coming. Yay. Thank you.
It was a great chat. Please feel free to put any last minute questions, but we will continue to follow you on Twitter. So please feel free to keep in touch even beyond the extent of this webinar. Have a great day. Thank you, Lenore, for all the captions.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.